Hello, hello. Welcome back to another Sleepers Media Transfer Class rankings in the offseason. Ryan Hammer here. Welcome by my good friend Tanner McGrath. Tanner, we are talking about the Johnnies today, yeah?
Number three overall. We've reached the top three.
Indeed, we have. I think you had them at four, correct?
Yeah, just outside the top three.
And I had them at three. A lot of twos in the rankings, no number ones, where I think most sites, recruiting sites, have them at number one or number two. It's a loaded class. They've got, it looks like about seven guys, six dudes who we talked about before who can really play. But I would definitely want to get your thoughts on the class. One word to describe this class, what would you say?
I said intriguing. So, I
Okay,
mean, there's a lot to love about this transfer portal class, and there's a reason. I ranked it fourth overall for a reason. Like, I
sure.
adore the Dylan Mitchell edition. I love how Oziah Sellers fits. The two bench guards, Darling and Sanan, are super interesting players with high upside, especially on the offensive end. Ian Jackson and Bryce Hopkins are bucket getters. Most of these guys are elite in transition, which is just so important for Rick Pitino. And this front court is going to be physical on defense and on the boards both ways. But while the talent's there, I do have some questions about the fit. Like the bench guards, they
Mm.
can't defend. Jackson doesn't play great defense. I don't know if he can play point guard. That said, Rick Pitino is an elite coach. He's going to coach guys up in the amoeba zone defense. And like, look, the I think I prefer the offensive talent this year to last year. But of course, will Patino ever change his half court scheme, or will we keep seeing these grinding half court possessions that end in a mid range jumper and an offensive rebound? Because this roster could do that too at a high level, even. I'm just fascinated with how this all comes together. I have a lot of questions, but it's going to be fun to watch.
And we will get to the questions. Quick side question right here. Rick Pitino said, point guards aren't real anymore. Do you think that's the nature of the honesty and truth from him, or do you think that's like I don't have a point guard this year, so therefore point guards aren't real?
How can he say that when he had Kadari Richmond?
There again, there's the point. He
Yeah,
hasn't
it's
had
like
like
that. It's like I think it's kind of BS. I don't know. Like someone someone has to run point. Someone has to be the quarterback of the offense. Someone has to get everything set up.
in
Or
some
you could just
capacity.
run like I don't know, five out all isolation ball. Like I think the Illini did that a few years ago. But
Yeah, in some capacity. And I see what he's saying. Like, kind of like you said with this roster, intriguing, interesting. Someone's going to have to be the point in some capacity. It seems like Ian has said that he could be that, but they have a couple of playmakers in their team. My one word was powerful. Maybe I thought of explosive also. I'm just not sure how explosive Bryce Hopkins is going to be after the injury, but I know he's powerful. Ian's obviously a rim rocker, and they have Zuby already. So Dylan Mitchell is probably one of the best athletes and dunkers in the entire country. He's like 6'8", 6'9". So I think they're going to have very similar physical dominance to what they had last year. And kind of like we said, we talked about that front court a little bit before. But I put powerful. So let's get on to player by player. We got seven guys. I will start at the top relatively, I guess, and we'll go grades for each of us. Let's start with Ian Jackson. I want to hear your grade on Ian Jackson.
I'm a little bit lower on Jackson than most. I give him a two-star transfer.
Mmm.
Yeah, very
Two.
confusing. Very confusing transfer to me. All right, so there's the
Woo.
good. The good is he's elite in transition, which will play well with Patino. He shot 40% from three last year. He actually did all right getting downhill toward the rim, and he finishes well. He shoots above average at the rim, which will also fit well with Patino. The bad, he is a horrendous defender, a legit zero on defense. UNC's defensive rating jumped 15 points when he was on the court last year. And toward the end of the season, Hubert Davis couldn't keep him on the court. I think he barely played 16 minutes per game over the final 10. He barely played in March, didn't make a shot when he did. I can't remember if he was hurt, but he couldn't get on the court. We have no idea if he could play point guard. And I think, again, that was the big question. And I still think Patino's going to try and make him play point guard. And surprisingly, he was good in ball screen creation last year. He was just so limited. There's so many question marks and unknowns with him. The upside is high because he's athletic, he's a good shooter. It'll help with floor spacing, and which the team had none of last year, and he can play up tempo downhill ball. But I don't know. There's a lot of questions with Jackson for me.
Yeah, two. You took me back, honestly. I know that I think sites have him as 5-star because like he was a 5-star recruit in high school, whatever. But um, Well, I understand what you're saying. I put 3.5 star, and I even considered four. I went back and forth between 3 and 4. I think as a freshman, seeing undeniable talent on a team that had a very rocky year and struggled, knowing the upside and talent is there, and he was good. He was relatively efficient in a lot of avenues. I think that gives me enough confidence to know that under a really good coach in a more refined system, I think he'll be very good and very impactful. And I think St. John's and the way they're going to play is fits him well. I hear you on the defensive side. Do you think there's a caliber of like physically he could probably be an unbelievable defender, like complete 180. So do you have any confidence? Because I do. I have the confidence that he could turn that around under Patino in the right system. Like, do you see him being a plus defender at all?
Yeah, I mean anyone can under Patino, and you do make a good point of like the Davis, North Carolina teams have been pretty poorly mismanaged recently, and so I could see how they misused him on that end of the court and also on the offensive end, probably.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I have confidence for the team because of Patino, but I
Right.
don't. If you're taking him as a face at face value from how he played last year, I think the fit is a little weird, and I'm a little sketched out by it.
Okay. And it might help if they have other guys, which we'll get on to now. Let's go with the big man, Bryce Hopkins. I want to hear your transfer rating on him.
So I went three, but this is a really almost impossible to judge transfer because he's played in four Big East games in the past 2 years. And
Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
worry about the nagging injuries, how effective or explosive he'll be after all those knee problems. Many are lower on him as a transfer because of his relatively inefficient scoring and some troubling defensive skills, aside from his rebounding, which is good. But man, he was so good at his peak. Like, could
Yeah.
draw fouls like crazy. He's a great perimeter cutter, and I feel like that could be a strong point for this year's Johnny's team. He averaged 16 and 9 in his breakout year, 2022-23. And while he was inefficient in transition, he could really run. He got out. And he can, he's a bucket getter and rebounder. I don't know where he'll play. I think it's tough to put him on the wing because he hasn't proven to be that consistent of a 3-point shooter. And I don't think you could play him over Mitchell at the four. But as a spark plug bench bucket, I think there's a lot of potential for him to refine his form under Patino. And hopefully he's one of the guys that also gets coached up in this defensive scheme.
Interesting. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's a good point. Like he hasn't played in a while. It helps that he knows the Big East, he knows the style, he knows exactly how to play, and I think him and Patino probably connect on that. I went 4 star. I want to think that there's a lot of that like potential all first Big East team kind of guy and contender for a Big East Player of the Year like he was. He was so good in his prime of Providence. Like he started shooting the ball at some point on and off, and him and Zuby, like the thought of him and Zuby at their peak together is a problem.
Yeah.
It's exactly like it was last year for St. John's, realistically, with the size differences. But I like him a lot. Like he's awesome. I know it's been a while, but I'm gonna err on the side of positivity for him. I think so. It's
I
now
would also
the
like to be positive because he's so fun to watch when he's at his peak. And he just
yeah.
you hate rooting for injuries. It sucks. Like
Yeah,
what's
no,
happened to him.
it kind of just is what it is. All right,
Yeah.
on to the next guy. Stay in the front court. Dylan Mitchell from Cincy and Texas before that.
5 stars. My favorite transfer in this class. Ranked fourth naturally in DRAPM last season, which is kind of an all-in-one metric that's supposed to quantify how much a player is worth to his team per 100 possessions. For example, Mitchell's 6.1 mark means he's responsible for his team allowing six fewer points per 100 possession,
Oh,
or posting a 6-point lower defensive rating. That mark trailed only Thomas Sorber, Jared Billups, and Milos Uzan. Per more typical on-off metrics, I mean, Cincinnati's defensive rating dropped 16 points with Mitchell on the court compared to when he was off. He was one of the five best defenders in the country for a Bearcats team that was consistently a top 25 defense all year.
yeah,
And we should keep scheme in mind here a little bit because Mitchell was working in Wes Miller's like deep drop scheme with Aziz Bandigo was anchoring it as a good rim protector. But Cincinnati's drop was only so effective because they used Mitchell as kind of like a hard hitting free safety of types. He just
yeah.
could blow up middle of the floor actions while still defending 1 through 5 on the perimeter. Made it so hard to score because the Bearcats took away ball screen, snake actions, and catch and shoot opportunities. But I do think he can be similarly effective in Patino's matchup zone, which is more of an attacking ball pressure scheme, the opposite of Miller's drop. But he'll still be asked to do similar things, right? blow up ball screen actions, defend 1 through 5 on the perimeter. And he could generate more steals and more runouts, which is huge because while he's slightly limited on offense, but he's a monster in transition. Also, posted a really high steal rate last year while never fouling and a great two-way rebounder. I think his offensive upside actually is a little bit higher too. He's become a better cutter and finisher,
Yeah.
especially as the season went on last year. I think he'll be a good off-ball scorer. I think he's becoming a better short roll passer. I think he can work the high low with Zuby. There's just so much to love. The fit is perfect, and I think the ceiling is unlimited.
Yeah, I love Dylan. I loved him coming out of high school and college. I think there is a clear ceiling offensively because it's simple. You can't, especially on a St. John's team, like you can't shoot the ball, you can't offer good spacing in the front court. Like that limits you a lot, and that limits
Mhm.
you on any basketball floor. And I think when he tested NBA Combine, NBA Waters, the Combine, he like shot well there, but it was like open practice facility and stuff like that. And I got excited. I think that was after his year one. I was like, oh, maybe this year he'll have a huge breakout offensively and shooting wise, that really hasn't happened. I like him a lot still. I think, like you said, athletically, he's probably the best in the country, if not one of the best. Defensively, and really on both ends of the floor, in the paint and around the rim, he's unbelievable. He's a
Yep.
blur in transition. He shot blocks like crazy. So put him at the four. I think if him, Zuby, or even Bryce, say Bryce is fully like if he's in a in good fitness, if one of them can really space the floor out well, like you could play three of them at once and let Dylan guard whatever opposing guard he has to because he can guard on the perimeter like that, which I like the idea of. I didn't even give my rating. I gave him a 4 star. I like him a lot. I think, like you said, efficiency wise, it's there, and he impacts the game way beyond the simple stats and surface layer statistics that you brought up. So I like that a lot. It sounds like you're super high on him, which I like.
So high.
I can
Love
get
this
down
guy.
with. All right, let's go on to the next one. Let's go with Dylan Darling from believe it's Idaho State. He was at.
If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about both Sanan and Darling together, and I'll make it
Sure.
as quick as possible. So I gave them both 3 stars.
Okay.
And if I were Rick Pitino, my main starting four-man lineup would be Jackson, Sellers, Mitchell, Ejiofor. And then my main like three-man bench lineup would be Darling, Sanan, Hopkins. Now, Darling was
Okay.
one of my mid-major darlings at Idaho State. One of the best Summit League players last year, pressures the rim, draws fouls like crazy, and has elite passing vision. I mean, he averaged nearly 6 assists per game last year.
He's good, yeah.
I think he posted a 35% assist rate. He wasn't like the most efficient in any area, but he was good in the penetrate and kick, like cut hitting and ball screen passing games. He's a playmaker, a pure playmaker. Meanwhile, Sanan is a shot creator. Very talented off the dribble and mid range shooters. Could be one of those like dribble shot creators, like honestly Jackson and Hopkins could be. He's also really efficient in transition. But the problem with these two is they both played super heavy on ball last year and could
Yeah.
either of them play off ball. So I think the best course of lineup is in the starting lineup, you put Jackson on ball as the dribble shot creator, and then Sellers, Mitchell, Zuby off the ball. And then off the bench, you bring Darling on ball as the playmaking point guard, and then Sanan and Hopkins off ball shot makers and creators. The problem with the second unit is defense could be a huge problem. And
Yeah.
passing might be a question for the first unit, honestly. But theoretically, Darling and Sanan could work together if Darling settles into the pass first role, which is not hard to imagine, while Sanan settles into an off ball scoring role, which is a lot harder to imagine. So I gave them both 3 stars. This is kind of my overarching thoughts about the bench unit of the
Yeah.
Johnnies.
I want to get your grade on Sellers also because I think we can group all three of them together in a way. So I'm curious because you mentioned them.
4 star. You talked
Okay.
about Mitchell as not a very consistent shooter. This guy is
Yeah.
he's a big shooter, and that's a great thing. He has the frame for Patino to coach him up in the matchup zone. He's 6'5", and he made 40% of his 4.2 3-point attempts per game last year. He does not do much aside from shooting, but that's what Patino desperately needs is shooting and floor spacing, and he will add that while not sacrificing too much on the defensive end. Also, like everyone else, elite in transition, 1.42 points per possession last year. It's
Wow.
87th percentile. Great fit. I think that's the difference between a 3 star and a 4 star for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think she thought it was fair to group them together because I think there's a lot of intrigue of which one of these guys will jump out above, past the other two, if at all, or will they be balanced and kind of their difference in roles. And you were going on. That's why I wanted to put them together. I literally put them all at 3-star. I like went back and forth, and I'm like, I think you could argue someone to go 2. The 4 for me is a protected thing. Like if Ian's not a 4, in my opinion, I know we differ on that, but to me, if I can't
Yeah,
put
we
Ian
differ a
at
lot.
4, I'm not going to put the other guys at 4. I see the vision on Sellers being that shooter because these 3 guys can all shoot. Shannon, Darling, Sellers can all shoot, and one, if not 2, or all 3 of them are going to have to be very, very reliable shooting the ball because Ian has shot the ball well, but I wouldn't bank on him being like the sharpshooter on in the starting 5. So I think they're going to need X factor shooters like they did not have last year. So shouts to Rick Pitino for doing that and going to get those shooters in the portal. I like Dylan Darling a lot too. I think he was Big Sky, right? Idaho State. Like
Yep.
I don't know the transition stuff. Like I know he was at a power team beforehand and like didn't play it all. And I question if he's gonna be able to fit into not only the Big East but into Rick Pitino's Big East, right? Because like Stephen Ashworth was able to do it and come and do that from Utah State, but that was to Creighton. Going to St. John's is a different story. They like to play a completely different way, so
Will he be
that worries me a
physical
little
enough
bit. But
is the big question, I think, with Darling. Can
yeah,
his
and
physicality translate? Yeah.
yeah, I brought up Ashworth because it's I think it's very similar. A guy who can shoot it and light it up, but also play make a little bit. And I think that's the vision for him. Now Ashworth is like 5'11", like he's where me and him are like the same height. So I think Darling would probably have a little bit on me, but he's the guy that's most interesting to me because if he can step up like you said as a point guard, like an actual point, that like unleashes their ceiling as a team because they have someone reliable to go to on and on and on. But it's an interesting group. They have a lot of guards and a lot of them can play. We went through the class. I think we're missing Hanji Tamba also, who I just it comes from the non D1 level. But question for you: who will be the best player from this transfer class at the end of the season for St. John's?
Mitchell, already talked about this. He's the ideal Patino defender, scrappy, tough, good at pressuring the ball, good at pressuring off the ball, will dominate in transition. And I think there's some hope on the offensive end that he takes some big steps forward. St. John's will be a better offensive team than Cincinnati was. So I think there's a lot of hope.
I like that. I think advanced stuff, Dylan will be the guy that stands out. I think he'll be seen by the real fans as the best player, but I think Ian, knowing back home in New York, I think production wise, Ian's going to be the guy where offensively he does take a little bit of a leap because I do believe in the upside there, and I think Patino is going to let him go and kind of give him space to do that. So I'll differ and say Ian Jackson,
Okay.
just because why not? Okay, big question you have for this team, this transfer class.
Point guard. Who's going to play point guard? Can Ian Jackson play point guard? Darling, like we talked about, is the purest point guard on the team. Do you have to play him 30 minutes a night as an on-ball playmaker and assist creator? Get the ball around to all your other off-ball scorers. I don't think you can start Sanon there because he's just a microwave player. Will whoever plays in that position at that position develop into a decent defender, or will
Yeah,
St. John's just get hunted at the guard position this season because the drop off from Kadari at the point of attack is going to be massive. I think there's
yeah,
a huge question mark at the point guard position for this team.
yeah. And maybe
Really,
it
the only
helps.
question mark, honestly.
And maybe it helps that they have multiple options to play. Like Ian's not a point guard, obviously, but maybe they're forming him to be able to play that a little bit. And then Darling, and then so like having a bunch of guys, maybe they'll be able to figure that out through the year. But that's probably the only question. My odd question is Bryce Hopkins' health, and I don't know, not health because he's healthy. It's overall like, what are we going to get about out of Bryce Hopkins? Are we getting a 15 to 20 points per game scorer, potential guy like he was at Providence? Or are we getting a guy who scores 9 to 12 points, which is fine also. Like whatever he's going to give, as long as it's good and impactful
Yeah.
and a net positive, I think that's what they need. I really want to see him be awesome because I like him, and it would be cool to see him make this comeback. But then him, Dylan, and Zuby all healthy, playing at their best is like it's like last year on steroids, on crack. Like
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what teams are gonna do playing against them,
The
which is gonna be
shot volume
crazy.
differential could be nuts. Could be just out of
Right. And
control.
then
Yeah.
it's kind of like how Florida played, where
Yeah.
offensively you let dynamic guards just go play freely beyond that if the front court is that good and that dominant.
Yeah.
But that's why that's my biggest question. Okay, well, wrap it up with one bold take from the transfer class.
Dylan Darling ends up as the starting point guard by the end of the year, playing high
Okay.
usage on ball minutes as the main distributor, averaging over 5 assists per game, and all the other guards, including one Ian Jackson, slide in around him.
big Dylan Darling fan over here.
I think,
Um,
well, he's just the purest point guard on the team, and I'm looking at
yeah.
this like I think he could play point guard, but I
If
don't know. Like
if you
it
had
could
to
end up badly.
guess, if you had to guess, when would you say in the season he ends up being the starting point guard, and also why? Do you think it's a reactive thing, like we need to have a point guard and we're changing it up, or it's proactive and like, you know what, he's playing pretty well and we're doing well, but we're gonna give him more minutes?
I think it's reactive. I think he starts the season on the bench. I think that they try to play Jackson at the point, and while he's a decent scorer, he's not a good enough playmaker or defender, and they have to shift around the lineup. And at some point in like December or January, Patino
Okay.
finds out that his best five-man lineup is with Darling at point. Again,
Okay.
bold prediction,
Yeah,
but
we're trying to be bold
that's what I
here.
see it. That's how I can see that happening.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't hate it. I see the vision, like I understand the reasoning behind it. My bold take is how do I word this? I'll say that just that Bryce Hopkins and Zuby together end up getting classified as one of the best, if not the best, front court duos in the entire country this season. I don't know when that would be either, obviously,
Mm.
but some point around Big East play in 2026 calendar, I think that Bryce will be adjusted enough, and just to think about him and Zuby together is awesome. And I know Zuby's going to be a freaking monster. So
So
um,
I prefer Mitchell at the four.
I understand that. But I don't. I think if Bryce plays up to his own standard, you can't not start him and play in big minutes.
Okay, that's
That's where
fair.
my take comes from. Where I think they'll probably start the year with Dylan. Ooh, they can't play all three
I
of them to start the year.
Yeah,
Can't.
that's what I think. I think you put well, that's why I think you put Sellers at the three, Mitchell at the four, Zuby at the five, and then bring Bryce off the bench.
And then who's your one and two? Ian and
Ian and someone.
at that point,
There's a returning guard on this roster, isn't there? That I'm not thinking of.
Sim's gone.
There
Sidney
might not be.
Wilcher's gone. Scott might not be there. I don't know.
Oh,
I'm not
there
sure.
really isn't actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
you'd have to
it's gonna
start
have to
Jackson
be
and
these
like one of the
guys.
bench guards. Yeah.
And Sandin had a good year, freshman also. Like I think that could be a fit. Sellers though, like there's your point of like, do you trade off defensively? Rick Pitino hates bad defense. He
Yeah.
hates it. So like,
Mhm.
I feel like he'd rather play Bryce Zuby, Dylan, and rely on two guards to shoot the ball rather because last year no one could shoot the ball. Literally no one on the basically no one on the roster was able to shoot the ball from outside. So I think they can find a way to play all three of them and then play two guards if the guards are shooting well because it's better than last year's spacing already. So
Yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense. It'll be that's
um
why it's so intriguing. I can't wait to see how
your
this all
word is
plays out.
fair. At
Yeah.
first, you said interesting, and I was like, "Yeah, I guess interesting. Of course, they're interesting." But now I get it. There's layers to that. There's
We could sit
deeper
here and talk
layers.
for 30 minutes about different lineup combinations with St. John's. I get excited about all of them.
And we basically just have, and that's our number three transfer class on the Sleepers Media YouTube. You can go check out all the other 25. We have number one and two coming, but that was the Johnnies, St. John's of New York Red Storm, with Rick Pitino, and a big time transfer class coming in at number three.